This week on TikTok Tuesday, we are talking about tics and mood. Many children with tic disorders also struggle with a laundry list of other symptoms, including anxiety and depression. 1 in 3 children in the US is diagnosed with anxiety. 1 in 3. So if you have 3 kids, one of your kids is likely to be diagnosed with anxiety. And half of them also struggle with depression. So you're getting anxiety and depression. So you get tic disorders, anxiety, depression. Maybe you end up with some other kind of mood issues going on in there. But these things, the anxiety, the depression, the tics, they've been on the rise for the last 30 years. And we have to ask ourselves, why? Why are they on the rise? And so from somebody who had chronic anxiety my entire life until the last 10 years. I thought it was who I was. I thought it was part of my personality. I thought that, I was just scared of everything. I was afraid everybody was going to kidnap me. I didn't want anybody looking at me. I was terrified of strangers. I thought that was really kind of who I was. And then I got to college and somebody was like, well, you have anxiety. You should take a pill. Well, pills didn't work. It actually made it much worse for me. And so it wasn't until my son got sick that I started working on myself and I no longer struggle with anxiety at all. It was like, the clouds had been lifted. So I really feel like for me personally, the mood, the anxiety, the depression really hits home. And so we're going to talk about that. But when we think about it, when you're on Facebook, when you're on Instagram, I cannot tell you how many people say they suffer from anxiety and depression. I see everyone on Facebook post every day that they can't even function because their anxiety is so bad. And for most people, the anxiety, the depression, the panic, they seem to snowball and get worse every day. So many people think, like myself, that anxiety is just part of your life and that's how you're going to live it. But let me be the first to tell you that you don't have to live that way and your children don't have to live that way. Your issues, just like I tell you all of the time, your tics are not the problem. They are a sign that there is a problem. Your issues with depression and anxiety, they are a symptom. They are not the problem. They are a sign. Woo, woo, woo. Your emergency lights are going off. There is something much deeper going on in your body. I have lived a life of anxiety. I have conquered it, and you can too. Let's really dig into this. So, first, we want to talk about mental health, inflammation, and food. So, we've talked about inflammation before. You've heard me talk about it. It's really kind of that driver. We're looking at that boiling pot. But we keep learning more and more on the subject of inflammation and how it affects your mental health. So, years and years ago, 30 years ago, because that's how conventional medicine works, we were told, oh, you have depression, you need some Prozac because you don't have enough neurotransmitters. Well, what happens in that process is that your body does not degrade neurotransmitters that quickly. You have inflammation. And when we're doing these brain scans now, these PET scans of the brain, we can see that those that are experiencing the depression, the anxiety, the higher manic levels, they have inflammation in the brain. And if that inflammation goes unchecked, then those neurotransmitters start to degrade and they start to degrade over time. And then we are looking at, we have all of this inflammation. This inflammation is driving the degradation of our neurotransmitters. So we have to look at mental health is really above and beyond, just, just having a symptom, an anxiety, a depression, a panic attack. It really is looking at that inflammation as a larger impact on chronic disease. And we really have to look towards inflammation. I mean, we know heart disease is caused by inflammation. So we have to look at what inflammation is doing into our body. So first we go over the many links between inflammation and mental health. Just know that the word inflame or inflammo means to set alight or ignite. So on fire, on fire. So because inflammation can become harmful, it has gotten a lot of bad press. However, you guys have heard me say inflammation isn't always a bad thing. In most areas of our health, it's important for balancing our immune system. When you're exposed to a germ or something, your immune system needs to turn on. But it's when that process gets overrun and our immune system is constantly turned on and we can't do those processes that we need to do. Long-term chronic inflammation can cause damage over time. And often there are few, if any, signs or symptoms, and that chronic inflammation is boiling that pot. It's boiling that pot. It's boiling that pot until we see the boil over symptoms. We can actually look at some inflammatory molecules, but I love to look at genetics. We can look at your genetic predisposition to inflammation. And let me tell you personally, when I look at my own genes, when I look at my kids' genes, when I look at so many of my clients' genes, I can see why they are experiencing so much of the mood and mental health issues. It is not just about having anxiety or depression or not enough neurotransmitters. We have to look at that factor of inflammation. There are so many factors when we are looking at mental health. But really, technically, it's estimated that a total 28% of the total population suffers from anxiety. Estimated that it's goes way underdiagnosed, that there's many more people. So when we're looking at depression, the link to inflammation was first discovered. Are you ready? Ready? In 1991. In 1991, with respect to bipolar disorders, the link between that and immune function was discovered as far back as 1981. Are you learning about these things from your pediatrician, from your doctor, from your physician? Are you learning about this? Are you learning about these studies that were done? Y'all, I was born in 1979. I am 43 years old. And when we're looking at these studies, one came out in 1981. I was 2 years old when this study came out. And this is not something that we're learning or talking about, right? These studies are old. So while there are many links between mental health and health issues, it's not the only connection. We also have to look at that inflammation really degrading those neurotransmitters. We have to look at reduction in growth factors like BDNF in the brain, and we have to look at chronically increased stress hormone levels. So when you are constantly under stress, we talked about at one point in the last month the top 4 triggers. These are underlying stressors. If you are chronically at a stress level of 47 out of 50, then we are looking at that as one of those drivers also for inflammation. So we have to look at that as part of the issue, right? We have to look at mental health and inflammation. So if you have, just think about this. If you have a child like I did that went Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, just really quickly mood swings, now I can look back and connect. What was that inflammation? What was that driver? For him, it was definitely food, but you have to understand food is just one piece of the puzzle. We have talked a ton about recipes and food on here recently, but just know that it really, really, really goes above and beyond food. We have to look at so many factors above and beyond food as a driver of inflammation. What are those stressors? We're looking at mental, physical, biological, environmental. What are those stressors driving the inflammation? And I can really, really look back and see that in my own child. So inflammatory illnesses like allergies, autoimmune diseases, food sensitivities, underlying infections, those can actually be associated with higher rates of mental health symptoms. So we have to look at what is going on inside the body. What's happening that might be causing these symptoms in our children? What might be causing these symptoms in you? And we also know that people who take certain inflammatory medications are also at risk for developing mental health symptoms. So we know that some of the medications that we're taking can also decrease our nutrients. This is a really good example. So proton pump inhibitors. You go down to Walgreens, you got the heartburn, you've got the GERD, you go down to Walgreens and you get the, I don't know, Nexium. And you take Nexium. First, they were only designed to be taken like no more than 6 weeks, and there's people who run them for 20 friggin' years. But you start taking those, they start to reduce your ability to absorb B vitamins. Okay? So you're getting into a nutrient deficiency by taking an over-the-counter medication, right? You need B vitamins in times of stress. So you're really stressed out, you're reducing B vitamins. You continue to become more inflamed. You're getting deeper and deeper into this nutrient deficiency. You need these B vitamins to help you make things like glutathione, your body's number one antioxidant. So can you see where we are really kind of driving this inflammation by, what we're eating, what the environment we're living in, the medications we're even taking, right? Definitely, definitely. But we know, like, there's some good studies out there. We're going to talk about a good study in a minute, but there's growing evidence that people who eat a high quality diet tend to have a better sense of well being and mental health. This includes better moods, lower stress, especially when we look at anti inflammatory diets. This is why we do food sensitivity testing. This is why we do the genetics, because we want to look at what is the ideal diet for you slash your child. What really is going to impact their body so that we can not only help them with their tics, but we can also help them with their mental health. We really need to look at, some of these things that we're eating, though, can really drive that inflammation, those fried processed foods. If your child is eating chicken nuggets and McDonald's every single day of the week, that's going to drive inflammation. And you're also, mom, you have the keys, you have the job, you have the money. Stop going to McDonald's and feeding your child chicken nuggets and french fries every day. Refined sugars and starches. We talk about the refined sugar all the time. And so many of my clients, if you're watching, no, like, you're on a paleo diet. We are avoiding those refined starches because they're really going to drive this inflammation. We've looked at your genetics. We know you have this disposition to chronic inflammation, right? So we have to then look at, well, what are some of those drivers? Yes, what we're eating can definitely be some of those drivers. Let's look at the next thing we want to talk about. So we've talked about kind of like food, mood. We've talked about inflammation as that driver. But let's talk about the SMILES trial. This is a really kind of cool study that really started out as an actual experiment. But it wasn't about just asking people what they ate. So, for example, there's studies out there that say, oh, you shouldn't eat red meat because it causes colon cancer. They basically said that they asked people, did you eat red meat? You have colon cancer. Did you eat red meat? Okay, they go together. No, that's not how it works. They didn't ask those people, are you smoking? Are you drinking? Are you eating McDonald's french fries every day? How much soda are you consuming? They only looked at red meat and colon cancer. They didn't look at these other things that really play into that. So I love that this SMILES trial didn't actually just say, oh, well, what did you eat? It actually measured their inflammatory markers and what their symptoms were. And it was really kind of randomized. And they looked at 67 people with depression and poor dietary quality over a 12-week trial. And the people who reported a high intake of sweets, processed meats, and salty snacks, a lower intake of vegetables, fruits, lean protein, and dietary fiber, they asked all of these people, eat more vegetables, fruits, legumes, lower fat dairy, raw unsalted nuts, fish, lean red meat, chicken, eggs, olive oil, fewer sweets, fewer refined grains, fewer fried foods, fast foods, processed meats, and sugary drinks. And they had to drink no more than 2 glasses of wine per day. Really, your kids should be drinking no glasses of wine per day. You get it. You get it. I'm kidding. And after this 12-week period, they saw that all of these people started to see improvements in their mood and their depression and their anxiety. So we know that eating more healthfully can actually be helpful for mental health conditions. So focusing on that better nutrition. I really all the time talk about whole foods. Whole foods. We don't need the things that come in a package. Yes, they are convenient, and yes, we are totally used to them and using them. But you can have a tray of chicken and vegetables for dinner, one pan, one sheet pan, super easy, maybe some chicken, some vegetables, some potatoes, you're done. You have a whole food nutritious meal right there. Some of the things that really can impact mood are nutrient deficiencies. It is true. This is one of the main reasons that I look at genetics, because for me, so much of my mood was nutrient deficiency based on my genetics. I could eat red meat. I follow a very, very carnivore style diet. I could eat red meat until I am red in the face, and I would still not be able to absorb enough vitamin B12 because of my genetic variants. And so when I started to increase the B vitamins that I need in my diet, my mood changed drastically. That, and I got rid of the inflammatory foods. I did food sensitivity testing. I figured out what foods were driving that inflammation, I took them out. Then I used my genetics to figure out what nutrients I really needed. So a lot of people are going to go out and they're going to shoot in the dark and they're going to try all these supplements and you're going to get frustrated, especially with ticks, because you try the magnesium, you try the B6, and it's not really working. And you cannot supplement your way out of a bad diet. You cannot supplement your way out of these symptoms. That's not how it works. It is a step-by-step process where we create a roadmap. So for me personally, the anxiety and depression piece really had so much to do with the fact that genetically, I was in a nutrient deficiency. Didn't matter what I ate. I mean, can eat the cleanest diet. I can eat all carnivore, but still just don't absorb enough vitamin B12. That's absolutely me. It's not everybody, but that's based on my genetics. I know. So we have to look at, yes, when you're in a time of stress, your body depletes B vitamins and C very quickly. So you have to replenish those. If you're eating a crap diet, you're not replenishing those. If you're just having the Kraft macaroni and cheese and the chicken nuggets, you're not replenishing those nutrients. Another nutrient that's really important is vitamin D. It helps with our circadian rhythms. It helps with sleep. It helps for growth and nerve cells and the developing brain. It is not a vitamin. It is a steroid. It is a corticosteroid, which means it's a dry steroid. Vitamin D, not a vitamin. It is a steroid. It's very important for our immune system as well. We have to look at minerals like selenium. We have to look at omega-3 fatty acids, which are essential. We cannot make them. We have to consume them. Seafood, nuts, legumes, leafy greens. We need to make sure we're getting omega-3s. And if you're eating grass-fed beef, you're actually getting some pretty good B vitamins. Or grass-fed beef, you're also getting some good omegas as well. Okay. Let's talk about some other factors. We've talked all about diet and mood and inflammation. But there are other factors, and I tell clients this. We have to look at diet, rest. How are you sleeping? Exercise. Are you sitting on your booty all day long? Stress reduction. So not only like, hey, there's a bully at school, or my boss is a jerk, but what are those underlying stressors, right? Those environmental stressors, those biological stressors. Are you creating your own waste byproducts in your gut because you have an underlying infection? Physical stressors. Do you need to go to the chiropractor? There's some alignment issues. And then we have to look at supplementation as this kind of last piece. Food is key. We want to do diet, but sometimes we need to put in some supplements. So let's talk about two other lifestyle factors that really, really matter when it comes to our mental health. Exercise. Yes, friends, exercise is important. People with mental health issues are more likely to lead a sedentary lifestyle. Are you sitting on your couch watching Shameless? So this is really another factor for increased levels of chronic inflammation. There's so much evidence that exercise helps to reduce the risks and symptoms of mental health issues. Regular exercise reduces inflammation. And we know this because we can measure CRP levels, and they are lower in people who regularly exercise. So we need to look at exercise. Not only that, exercise helps with digestion. If you got a little one who has poor digestion, get up, move. And it helps with making neurotransmitters. So exercise is really, really important. It actually can even help with our circadian rhythm. So I actually talk about this in my book that's coming out very soon. We talk about circadian rhythm and how exercise is important for that. Exercise in the morning so that you can sleep well at night. All goes together. So exercise is really an important piece. And if you guys are friends with me on Facebook, you saw my new personal trainer this morning. He's super cute. We also need to look at another lifestyle factor, which is sleep. If you've got a kid that's like with their tablet at night before bed, or maybe they are just on the video games constantly. I had a client who, his name is Charlie. He had been in the mental institution 3 times. Mom was desperate. And he wasn't seeing some good results. And the kid isn't sleeping. He's on these video games all night. You got to cut him off. Have to cut him off. Sleep plays a vital role in our physical and mental health. Lack of enough high quality sleep is very commonly associated with mental health issues. People who experience insomnia are at a higher risk for later developing those mental health issues. When we don't get enough sleep, it lowers our immune system. And it increases that chronic inflammation. Inflammation. You're going to hear me say it all the time. Increasing levels, we talked about CRP being lower when you exercise, but when we don't sleep, we get higher levels of CRP. We create more inflammatory cytokines, they're part of our immune system, and that's been measured in sleep deprivation. So if you're not getting at least 8 hours of sleep a night, you have to make it a priority. And really, kids need to get more than that. Kids need to get between 10 and 12 hours of sleep a night. Get the tablets out of the room, cut the video games off, stop watching TV late into the night, do things that are relaxing and calming to really get better sleep. So, that being said, we want to eat well. We want to eat well to support our mental health. We want to know our genetics. My sister says she would have committed suicide had she not done the genetic testing and followed a genetic protocol. I would have continued to have severe panic attacks where people had to pull me out of crowds because I could not function from anxiety and panic if I had not tested my genetics. So, diet, genetics, you have to look at those underlying stressors, what's going on inside the body. Exercise and sleep, all very, very important for mood. And they're totally connected to tics because your tics come from inflammation. They come from this dysregulated immune system. Your anxiety comes from inflammation. It comes from this dysregulated immune system. Your OCD, your SPD was huge, huge, huge for us. I mean, we were in the process of going to 12 sessions of occupational therapy for sensory processing disorder. We started doing this testing, the genetic testing, we made some changes, and they kicked us out of occupational therapy. They were like, lady, we don't know what you did to this child, but he does not qualify for this anymore. So it was really, really key for that as well. So we have to look at all of these different factors that drive inflammation that really impact our health. You know, it really is a big piece of